It's just acquisition, right? You think you have this network. And previously I had been in nonprofit, and we always in nonprofit would do this exercise with our volunteers where we would look at someone's network and figure out all of the different areas and spheres within your life, your networking sphere, your social network, whatever it may be, where we knew people. And I filled that out for myself, but it's so funny as I learned, and I think a lot of young entrepreneurs often face this challenge, is that even though I knew these people and they loved me and they believed in me, they didn't need or want my services.
This is Social Pulse Podcast Agency Edition, your go-to guide to solving your biggest marketing agency challenges authentically. I'm your host, Mike Allton, and each episode is an honest and frank look at what agencies go through, from churning clients to tackling tech and ideas that you can apply to your own business. And now, the rest of today's episode. Welcome back to Social Pulse Podcast Agency Edition, where each and every week we're talking to marketing agencies like you, going through many of the same struggles you're going through and sharing their stories. Subscribe to find in each episode inspiration, motivation, and the perspiration that go into growing and scaling agencies like yours. Now, as a marketing agency owner, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know when I say that growing and scaling an agency is hard. Honestly, it's harder than you think. For many, the top 3 cited challenges reported by agency owners were, number 1, acquiring new customers, followed by time constraints and cash flow. And as any business in the industry will tell you, if you're struggling to bring in new clients and keep a positive cash flow, you simply cannot grow and scale your business. Which is why finding agencies that have been around for over a decade is both a surprise and an opportunity. How did they manage to grow and achieve such longevity? How are they approaching marketing and agency management differently? That's what Brooke Sellas is here to help us with. Brooke is not only shaping the future of digital marketing one conversation at a time, but has also earned her stripes as an award-winning industry leader, recognized by Braze as a top 100 CMA influencer and strategist in 2024, and as CEO of B Squared Media, an agency over 12 years old. Brooke has crafted an approach that stands out, pioneering social care solutions for heavyweights like Brother International, Endless Pools, and BCU. She's one of my oldest and dearest friends in the marketing community and hosts an agency podcast of her own for Social Media Examiner. Welcome, Brooke. How are you doing?
Hey, friend. I'm so excited to be here, mostly because it's you, but also because I want to help other agencies.
Right. So let's get to that. Let's start off by talking about B Squared Media. Why did you start your agency? And tell us about, the services you offer, the kind of businesses you work for. Give us the skinny.
So, a very long time ago in another life, I was working for a different company, and I was responsible for not only their marketing. As the marketing director, she also wanted me to create revenue streams, which I did. And then my dad, funnily enough, came to me one day and said, "Hey, I just won you a pitch with our CMO." He was at a fintech company at the time. And he said, "But here's the deal. I'm out of it. I'm not in it. This is as far as I go. And if you win the pitch, you have to do it on your own, as in start your own company." So he kind of like gave me a gentle shove off the cliff.
Into the deep end.
Yeah. And I did win the pitch, and that's why I started B Squared. So I actually thank him a lot for that shove. And our biggest service today, fast forward, is we're a social media agency, but our biggest service is social care. So that's social media customer service. So helping our clients both acquire and retain customers through social media.
Fascinating. And we're definitely going to dive into that because I think that's one of your big differentiators. But you started this agency over a decade ago, which means statistically you're in the minority for having stayed in business and thrived for so long. What would you say have been some of the keys to your success?
I think having a numbers person right off the bat, I got lucky. This wasn't smarts. This was just luck. But for you, it can be smarts. My husband's a CFO. He has been forever. And so I immediately had that numbers, strategy, forecasting type person in my corner. I am not that person, right? I'm a creative person. I am not doing the maths very well. I think that's important. And I also think like just being realistic, right? We all think like, oh my gosh, we're going to make all this money and then we're going to sell and we're going to make all this money when we sell. And unfortunately, that's just not how it goes. So I think having an exit strategy is as scary or as like downtrodden as that sounds, I think it's important because you have a ripcord to pull if things get dire.
So first and foremost, I'm going to put Alex Sellas' LinkedIn link in the show notes. If those of you need a numbers guy, go ahead and propose. I think he's taken, but maybe you can get lucky and have him join your team, right? But
Yeah.
I also want to talk about the challenges and the struggles you
Yeah.
face, because no one's going to be in business that long without facing some serious hurdles, particularly in your early years. What were some of
Mhm.
those challenges?
Man, it's just acquisition, right? You think you have this network. And previously I had been in nonprofit, and we always in nonprofit would do this exercise with our volunteers where we would look at someone's network and figure out all of the different areas and spheres within your life, your networking sphere, your social network, whatever it may be, where we knew people. And I filled that out for myself, but it's so funny as I learned, and I think a lot of young entrepreneurs often face this challenge, is that even though I knew these people and they loved me and they believed in me, they didn't need or want my services.
Mm,
So it became more of finding ways to get in front of people who were in need of my services. So I ended up joining a local BNI group, which is like a networking group. And that's how I got a lot of my business in the early days. It was going to events and figuring out, who some of the key players were. I followed a lot of speakers. I became friends with a lot of people who were in my same shoes, like Mike. Mike and I actually wrote for, didn't you write for the Social Solutions Collective? It was a
yeah.
group of social media entrepreneurs who came together to write. We all knew each other. We all kind of helped each other out. I mean, this is so cliche, but it's true. Your network is your net worth, but only if you do the
Hmm.
work part of network, which means you constantly, to this day, I need for myself to have at least 3 networking calls a week.
Wow. Okay. So that was one of the things that you've done to overcome the acquisition challenge, right? Is that you are investing in your network and you continue to invest today, which is one of the things that I think is also a differentiator, right? A lot of people, they'll build things up to a certain extent and then they'll just assume, oh, well, it's working now. I no longer have to invest in networking. I no longer have to invest in marketing. I no longer have to invest in whatever it is that was getting them there.
Yeah.
Is there anything that's changed since then? I mean, a lot of times people will also say, what got me here won't get me there.
Yeah.
And now your agency has grown. Obviously, it's not just you anymore. It's not even just you and Alex. So have things changed in recent years?
Yeah, my other piece of advice is when you're not new anymore and when you do start to have some of the finances coming in, you have to reinvest that money back into the company. So I'll give you an example. We all have our margins and profits and net profits. If you take your net profit, right, which is assuming what you might pay yourself or what you made in a year, I would divide that by 3. 1/3 can go to you as a salary. 1/3 should go to savings for a rainy day, and 1/3 should be reinvested into the business. So, for part of that 1/3 in more recent years, we've taken some big risks and spent some big dollars on investments that have and have not paid off. So, and that's okay, right? We know we're taking that money and we're investing it, and it's a test. And it may not, you know, produce fruit, let's say. However, that's so important to what we do because through all of these tests, I can tell you that we've learned so many things and we've still come out the other side. So even though the test failed and the money's gone, we're still here. So I know that that strategy, at least for us, has done really, really well.
That makes a lot of sense. I heard somebody share something very similar recently at an e-commerce event, and they were talking about Facebook advertising, and they were talking about continually reinvesting into Facebook ads or whatever platform it would make the most sense for you and your business. But how he loved this, he used this great analogy where too often businesses will stop the ad spend too soon,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's a few bucks or a few $1,000. They're putting money into ads, and if they're not seeing results right away, they'll cut it off. And he's like, it's when you've put a seed down in the dirt and you stop watering because you're not seeing any growth, and you didn't realize there's a little sproutling and they're just about to come up, but you cut off the water and you killed it. And so they stopped that investment. And I really like how you were talking about how you're putting aside some money for yourself, some for a rainy day. Oh my gosh, is that so
You will need it.
important? You will need it. I don't care what you think. You will need it. And yeah, it may
Mhm.
not be a black swan event like a pandemic, but something's going to happen. You
Yes.
will need that money, but then reinvesting in marketing. And one other quick follow-up. You talked about some of the other things that you've tried, dude, that maybe didn't work out so
Yeah.
well. Could you share a couple?
Yeah. So we've tried influencer marketing, didn't go so well. We tried account based marketing, didn't go so well. And here's
Mm,
why. I think understanding what your market category is, and then therefore, based on that category, what your market problem is so important. And what I've come to find and learn is that we were very early to market with social media customer care. We started doing this 8 years ago. We went public with the service 6 years ago. And just this year, I feel like we're seeing people talk, big brands talk a lot about social media customer care. So, with that, the audience that we were trying to target sat everywhere within a company, right? It wasn't the CMO or marketing, it wasn't the CXO or experience, it wasn't customer success, it wasn't HR, it wasn't business development, it wasn't e-learning. And by the way, I've literally closed clients where each one of those departments owned social media customer care, right? So what I realized was we have a bigger problem to solve. We have to look at owning our category versus ABM or like influencer marketing, because we're so early to market and because we really only have two competitors. Now, that's a lot of information I just threw at you, but I think really digging deep and doing the deep work into your industry, your category, your competitors is so important, because we've known we've had a problem for a really long time, but it took the really, really deep work to understand exactly what that problem is and what will and what won't solve that problem.
It's a lot of great information because, folks, you're listening to this, and I hope you're trying to apply some of what Brooke's saying to yourself, to your own agencies. Influencer marketing didn't seem to work for her. ABM didn't seem to work for you. That's not to say it won't necessarily work for you. In your case, you're going to be in a completely different category, probably in a niche than Brooke. It might be that, interestingly, the influencers might have had an impact, but because the category was so unknown in the past,
Yeah.
they might not have had the direct impact we were looking for at that time. It's hard to say. I'm in the same boat at Agorapulse, where I'm responsible for our partnerships, and I'm working with other brands and other influencers on partnerships. And still, it's a very nebulous area. Who
Yes.
owns partnerships? Who should we report to? The CRO, the CMO, the CEO directly? And I'm going to throw out a term that most of you listening have probably never heard of: nearbound. That's a new category being created specifically within the partnership umbrella, where it's not outbound, it's not inbound. It's working with our brand partners to co-sell into our mutual customers. It's fascinating, but it's brand
Yes.
new. So when I talk to somebody about nearbound, they're like, near what? I don't,
What?
I don't understand what that is. Is that a hockey play? What? I don't understand. So I totally get it. Fantastic advice. Folks, we're talking with Brooke Sellas about building an agency that lasts. Now, listen now as our friends from Stony Creek Social Media Agency share part of their story.
One, I love social media. I love what we do. I love, one of my sayings is that I feel like we're changing the world one post at a time. And the positivity, it's just, who I am. Currently, we are growing leaps and bounds. We just in the last couple of years have expanded our office. We're getting ready to expand again. We manage over 150 accounts just on Agorapulse. So it has to be user-friendly for me and everyone that works with it, and it has to be something that I know that I can rely on, that I can trust. Like I said, and the biggest feature that we have is just the dashboard, that it is so easy to use and that anybody can use it. And actually, one of the reasons why I switched from the company that I had used before was that the lack thereof of customer service. It's definitely been, if not the best, one of the best companies to deal with as far as customer service.
I think one of the major differentiators for your agency and a huge factor in your success is that approach to social media and social care that you touched on a couple times. Tell us about that approach. What is it? Why are you so passionate about it? How is that different from so many other agencies and businesses?
I think it leads to another piece of advice is listen. Your customers are telling you every day in all sorts of ways what they want. And what I kept hearing early on when we provided just, basic social media management was, we do the content in house and we really love our team. Can you just help with the community management, right? Or review management or monitoring social, right? Again, there's a lot of different names that kept popping up. And then I would say, well, yeah, I guess we could do that. And it's just community management. But as we started to get into what that community management was and listened to the client and asked a bunch of qualifying questions, what we found was that it's a much, much bigger than community management or social media moderation, because really what we're looking at is the entire digital customer life cycle. And so that involves not only attracting people, obviously, to those social pages, but also nurturing them and having brand conversations so that we can start to understand our clients' wants, needs, and desires. And ultimately, what we found was a lot of the social chatter that's happening on social media pages, and we've seen this grown year over year. A lot of the chatter is acquisition based, meaning someone's coming to Agora Pulse's social channel and saying like, hey, how much is your software every month? Or does your software include social listening, right? Those are interest questions. And as we continue on with that conversation, they can turn into intent questions, right? Like intent to buy. And so we quickly figured that we needed to not only attract people and retain customers who come to social for support, but also be ready to sell those customers who have those interest and intent questions for the brand. So it's everything in the words that were described, but it's also social selling, and we put it all in one nice, neat package.
It's everything all at once.
Everything, everywhere, all at once. I mean, that kind of was what it is. Yeah. I mean, a lot of it's negative. A lot of it's, not fun necessarily, but you'd be surprised at how quickly you can turn those digital rants into smiles just by showing people that they're being heard. That's really it. Honestly, it's not that hard.
Yeah. Yeah. But to your point, it's different from how most businesses and probably most agencies approach social media as a channel, which is simply as a distribution and broadcasting medium.
Yeah.
They're not deliberately trying to have conversations, and they certainly aren't investing that amount of time and care into the conversations that are there, which would in turn foster additional conversations. Because I know that's what you and your team do. You create this wonderful environment where people feel welcomed and seen and heard, which makes them even more willing to participate in a conversation. If they feel like, they're just, shouting to the wind, then they're not going to bother. They're going to move on to another brand or not at all. So I think that's powerful.
Yeah. And if you look at the research, again, this goes into that deep research. I feel like we've been in deep research mode for almost really the whole time we've been offering this service. So like 6 years, we've been in deep research mode. But what we're seeing with this deep research that we've been doing is, the consumer base has changed. It's becoming younger and younger, and the younger generations are coming into their buying power. And what's happening is they're using social media to buy, to research, to ask their peers questions, right? And they're actually now weighting brand conversations, so conversations with the brand, whether they initiate that conversation or the brand does, as high or higher than online reviews. So that was kind of like an aha moment for us, because we're like, wait a minute, right? Review management is important, and we do that as part of our service, but understanding that those conversations that you're having on social media are actually helping people decide whether or not they want to buy from you is a huge game changer if you listen.
Absolutely. Now, thinking about some of the clients that you've worked with, I'm sure every client you've ever worked with has just been amazing. But if you were to put yourselves in a different agency owner's shoes, perhaps, and think about some of their not so great clients, what shouldn't clients do? What would get them literally fired? As a
Yeah.
Can you share any?
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, I think we all come across this, or you will, right? It's not an if, it's a when, unfortunately. But this happened early on too, and I have to say, early on, I was kind of like, oh well, we got to pay the bills. Everybody wants to get paid, so we have to put up with this. Now my attitude's very different. And if you mess with my team, my beautiful team who is doing everything in their power to help you sell to and retain customers, we're not working together. So again, that took a lot of maturing on my part to understand how important it was to protect my team at all costs. And so we have difficult clients, and it's okay to have difficult clients. What I will not tolerate and what I will not expose my team to are clients who are just outright rude or mean or disrespectful. And I think, again, it's a learned lesson, but the earlier you learn it, the better.
Yeah, kudos to you for taking that stance. And this is exactly why I ask questions like this, because there are many agency owners listening. You listening right now might be as a fairly young agency owner. Maybe you're a boutique agency owner and you're just bringing on staff for the first time. These are the kinds of questions that we're bringing up here. They're kind of life lessons, right? For agency owners that there's no
Yeah,
manual. When I raise my hand and say, you know what, I'm going to start my own agency, there's no manual to tell me
I
what to look
wish.
out for when it comes to taxes and accounting and pricing and
Oh,
services and staffing and client management. So
all the
we're looking out
things.
for you.
Yeah, there's no playbook. And I think, that's a hard one to learn. I get it. Like sometimes you got to pay the bills, right? And
Exactly.
and I totally get that. And that's why I say difficult so okay, but rude or disrespectful, I'm just not going to tolerate that.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, one of the things that we haven't talked about yet, and I always really am curious what agencies are doing, is with regard to tools. So I'm curious,
Mm.
what are some of the tools in the B squared media tool stack that you just absolutely adore from an agency perspective?
Yeah, I think, we all probably have some of the social media management tools that are lovely, like Agorapulse, lovely. I think social listening is really big for what we do because, if you think about those brand conversations and people having conversations about your brand, there are many times when you're not tagged, right? So if they're mentioning your product name and not the brand, you're not going to see that conversation unless you're using social listening. So, if moderation and social care is very important to you, I would beg you to, invest in a social listening tool so that you can get proactive with those conversations instead of remaining reactive. I also think I mean, I know people are probably like, "Oh, no, not AI again," but I will say AI is such a great tool for efficiency with social media. So I'm not saying it's replacing anyone on our team. It hasn't and it won't. What it has done is helped people become more efficient with creating content, creating different headlines for ads, A/B testing, things of this nature. I would say whatever large language model you're into, go for it. We use the paid version of ChatGPT. We also look pretty heavily at design tools because let's face it, on social things have to be pretty.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give another AI tool a shout out here. And again, sorry for all of those who are groaning at the AI word, but Descript is such a great
Mm,
tool. It's important, I think, that if you are the face of your agency, how to put yourself out there and be authentic. Mike and I were actually talking about some of this in the green room before this, but I know that I have to get people more familiar with my face, my voice, like it or not, and just my mannerisms, right? I'm kind of goofy. I talk with my hands. I make a lot of jokes. I laugh a lot. This is just who I am. And I found that putting little quick snippets of short video of me talking about what we do in the social care space, but with my everything has been very successful for us. And so I use Descript for that because I am not a tech person, y'all. I know that I work in social media, but I am not a tech person. So if the tool can do the heavy lifting, great. And then the other tool that I would say that we use a lot has to do with like keyword research. So like an SEM Rush or an Ahrefs or something like that would be fantastic just because again, because we are in a category that's fairly small, right? We kind of have a blue ocean strategy going on, considering, we're early and we only have two major competitors, we're very big on understanding like what the keywords are, what are the users saying, what are the customers calling it, what are our competitors doing, et cetera, et cetera.
That's fantastic. I'm glad you're putting those kinds of snippets out there. You have a lovely voice and you're very relatable in how you communicate. And that's why that material is successful. It wouldn't be successful if you had an annoying voice because people wouldn't want to listen to you anymore. But I'm glad you brought up AI too, because I know where you're coming from. A lot of people are like, I'm tired of AI, but I'm going to push back on those people because this is not Clubhouse. This is not Be Real. This is not a fad that in 6 to 12 months, people will have moved on to something else. This is what in the financial world they would call black swan event, where things are changing so radically right now that it's not actually possible for us as humans to predict accurately how things are going to be in 12 months. It will only be in 5 to 6 years we're able to look back and realize this was a revolution on the scale of the Industrial Revolution and how AI was going to have an impact on every aspect. And I raised that point because I do want to make sure all of you listening are thinking about how AI is going to impact your agency, your clients over the next 3 to 5 years. Brooke, you and I had the pleasure of going to the Marketing AI conference last fall. And I was just telling somebody else yesterday that I appreciated and was impressed by that conference in a lot of ways, but mostly because it was filled with agency owners who were there for that purpose. They were there to find out, okay, I need to know what I need to know, but I don't know what I need to know. So that's why I'm here, right? To get this spoon fed to me.
It's so true. I mean, that's what we were saying, right? So my entire mastermind group went, we decided as a group to go because we didn't know what we don't know. And we came away saying, we're really glad we went because now we felt like we had a leg up. Out of all the other agency owners who aren't paying attention to AI, we felt like we had a leg up. And I mean, was it yesterday that Mark Cuban came out and said, if you are not paying attention to AI, you will fail. So it may be annoying to hear it. Yeah, it may be annoying to hear it, but I think because you have an onus as an agency owner, you have a responsibility to your clients, to yourself, to your team members to keep pushing forward, that you have a responsibility to at least get to know AI. Even if you hate it, you need to get to know it. So do the deep research there too. Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. That was something we just talked about in our previous episode with Megan Bowen from Refine Labs. She referenced the exact same quote from Mark Cuban and made the exact same point. So that's fantastic that you guys are aligned in that way. I just got one more question for you. And again, this is one of these questions that we love asking agency owners. And you can take it and you can answer it however you'd like, because everyone's got different perspectives on this. But I'm really curious how you currently measure the business impact of social media for your clients.
So for us in particular, it's retention and acquisition, right? So not to get too nerdy on you, but when we're having these conversations through social, and you can do this too, so take this and use it, please. I'm begging you, use it, do it. We label those conversations as acquisition or retention, right? Sales support or customer support. And then once you start labeling those conversations just with acquisition or retention, you can start to understand which channels have the most volume of conversation, which channels have the most volume of retention, which channels have the most volume of acquisition. That helps you better spend your time, energy, and money on the platforms where those conversations are happening most. But it also helps you understand, okay, if we can solve more customer issues through social, and we know it costs $14 when a customer, calls the call center, and this is an actual example. Typically, we're 12 times cheaper doing it on social versus someone calling into the call center. And then with those acquisition conversations, you can start to, especially if it's a product, a client who has a product that you're serving, they've got MSRPs for those products. Start to put price tags on those unique conversations that are acquisition, and those $100 here, $100 there. All of a sudden, if you've got a lot of acquisition happening, this month, you can say to the client, look, we've got about $100,000 of acquisition content conversations sitting out on social. How are we going to close this? How can we bring it in? And how can you figure out how to do that so you can attribute it to what you're doing for the client and to your work on social media?
Love that. Love that. And I'll just do a quick plug that Agorapulse actually does a lot of that automatically. You can do the labels in Agorapulse automatically. It integrates with Google Analytics. So as you're tracking the links and things that you might share, even in a comment, right? Somebody asks, do I have this cartridge in this color? Or do I have that particular pair of jeans in this size? And your staff gives them the direct link. You get to track that and attribute that. So that
Use it.
ROI is
Use
built in there.
Yeah, use it. I'm telling you, like it's so nice that Agorapulse has that built in for you. We did this work manually for so long. So if you have a tool in front of you that can do it, please use it. You'll be all the better for it.
100%. Brooke, this has been absolutely amazing. You are such a treat. Thank you so much for coming on. Tell folks who want to learn more about you where they can go, how they can find out.
I think I'm the only Brooke Sellas on the planet. So you could literally just Google Brooke Sellas. It's Brooke. There's a little silent E on the end that always gets everyone. And then the last name is Sellas. Or you can just go to b2 media and you can find out all about the work that we do and connect with me there as well.
Fantastic. We will have all those links in the show notes. That's all the time we've got for today, friends. I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you did, please like and subscribe us on Apple Podcasts, the Social Pulse Podcast Agency Edition, and I will see you next time. Thank you for listening to another episode of Social Pulse Podcast Agency Edition, hosted by Mike Allton and powered by Agorapulse, the #1 rated social media management solution, which you can learn more about at agorapulse.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast player and be sure to leave us a review. Your feedback is important to us.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Robbie Samuels hosts the On the Schmooze podcast. Robbie, tell listeners what to expect from the show.
Since 2015, I've interviewed entrepreneurs who overcame challenges to achieve success in their field or industry. Tune in to On the Schmooze to listen as I ask deep questions to elicit untold stories about leadership and networking.
And where can people subscribe?
Find the show at ontheschmooze.com or on marketingpodcast.net, or just search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard them. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.